Now for business updates across the globe, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Doctor, very interesting comments on Twitter this morning. There was some fire in your belly when you were referring to Twitter. That was excellent stuff. Very excellent breakdown earlier. As always. Okay, Asian markets, they're mixed. The People's Bank of China has come out to say that, well, they're going to, reduce restrictions in the mortgage sector, which has been troubled over in China. They're going to try and put in some more stimulus, but it seems like it's more talk, anything than action. But as far as what to watch today, I think the Women's World Cup is starting, but Aaron will take you through all that. So we've got the Bank of Turkey, Turkey's central bank, going to be giving us their rate decision later on today. We get U.S. initial jobless claims, finding out how many people are seeking unemployment benefits, which are palliatives, huh? And then you've got Blackstone, one of the largest asset managers in the United States. They're going to be releasing their earnings before the market open. And then we'll get a Euro area consumer confidence index consumer confidence report to find out how individuals, businesses in the Euro area are looking at the business environment and living and so on. Then Asian markets, so they're mixed. I know Japan, the Nikkei 225 is up because Japan just reported a trade surplus, first one in since 2021. But the Kospi in Korea is down, China is down. Again, there are just worries about whether or not China really is going to support the economy to follow up with its rhetoric. But again, Japan exports to the U.S. We're up, I think $308 billion was their surplus for the second quarter in almost 2 years. And then we're going to get Japan inflation tomorrow, actually. What else is going on? TSMC, which is one of the largest chip makers in the world, reported their first drop in quarterly profits for about 5 years or so. So I guess, again, the chips are very important with respect to it being in cell phones and electronics. There was, less sales in the second quarter, so that impacted them. Although they are forecasts, and they also forecast less revenue and less profit for this year. They're still hopeful on demand for chips for artificial intelligence. NVIDIA is one of their big customers, but you can see their revenue down 10%, net profit down 23%. So pretty big drop there, and that's for TMC. So we go to Europe, and wheat prices over the last 5 days have been climbing because Russia, put out a threat, basically saying any ships that are found around that Black Sea area where the corridor where the grain deal that they pulled out of with Ukraine, any ships that go through there, they're going to take them as a military threat. Or they'll say that the ships are carrying military equipment to help Ukraine, which is just how the Kremlin has been acting. But either way, wheat prices have been climbing over the last 5 days. As far as again, we've talked about the impact. For us players here in Nigeria, I think they've stocked up for the second and third quarter. So if that grain issue is protracted, then we might see some issues in the fourth quarter of this year to where prices might be impacted and could climb. Still on Russia, Putin has skipped the BRICS summit, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa summit next month. He's not going. So even though the Kremlin was, waxing lyrical, saying that there was nothing that could be done, nobody's going to arrest him. There's a warrant out for his arrest. South Africa, of course, saying that they wouldn't act on it, but he's sending, I think it's Sergei Lavrov in his place. But this is kind of a blow to the Kremlin in that they were saying that the U.S. efforts to thwart him going there had failed and so on and so forth. So he's staying put. And by the way, the BRICS, they're going to be talking about how they can, move to another currency and displace the dollar and all that good stuff. So we'll see how things work out there. To the U.S. Earnings, it's all been earnings. Goldman Sachs, 58% drop in their earnings for the second quarter. Big drop. They're going through a transition period. Their wealth management division, if you compare that to in the middle there, Morgan Stanley had 16 billion or so, a big jump. Theirs was only 3 billion, drop in about 4%. They had layoffs, they have restructuring. So Goldman is going through it right now. Then quickly, other earnings that came out yesterday. Tesla, their stock did drop though, even though their deliveries did quite well as far as their earnings are concerned. Tesla's gross margins were lower than expected. Why? Your gross margin, not to get too nerdy here, is basically your revenue minus your cost of goods sold divided by your revenue. So it's your percentage of your gross margin, your gross profit margin as a percentage of your revenue. If it's smaller, well, that means that your revenues are not doing as well. So that was 25% in the quarter of last year. Tesla has been cutting prices on their vehicles. Elon Musk says it's because as interest rates continue to rise, they will have to cut more. And they're also focusing on other investments. A supercomputer that's going to cost them $1 billion. They want to build by 2024. Other gigafactories focusing on supplying energy. They are going into the UK market to provide electricity. So they are diversifying, and even though their deliveries were up 83% on their vehicles, the markets were not impressed, or rather were worried by the gross margins falling. So that's Tesla. The stock dropped about 4-5%, but year to date, I think it's up about 120%. Netflix also reporting their earnings, and this market also reacting in disappointing manner. They did well, revenue up, well, just about 2%, but I think they were expecting 8.5 billion there. The subscribers, though, they really did beat. Almost 6 million new subscribers in the second quarter. The forecast also just about 2 million. They've got about 238 million subscribers. They've been doing, they've been cracking down on password sharing. So that has had a bit of an impact, where they're saying if you want to give somebody else your password, you will have to pay a fee for that. And then they added some other ad tiers as well to try to put more ads on there. So it was a decent report, decent earnings report from Netflix, but the market didn't seem to be impressed by that. Maybe they've been too bullish on how Netflix has been doing, but they're one of the few entertainment companies doing well. And then to Africa, you've already touched on this. President Tinubu and Shettima will be meeting with governors on palliatives. How do you effectively implement this? It's really hard. They were left with what? They don't have. They have to. You now have to work on the database, the social register, as Ayo mentioned. How you get that through. Their FAC allocation, as we talked about yesterday, is going to be massive. I think that's part of the reason why they'll be talking to the governors, because that's 1.9 trillion or so is what they have to effectively put forward. So how you do that, and then, Dr. already mentioned this. Taiwo Oyedele has left PwC to go focus on that tax committee that he's going to be chairing. South Africa inflation slowed to 5.4%. We'll see what happens with their next meeting. And the House of Reps.
Oh, don't go there.
Investigative
I think
that's it. That's all we got for today.
A couple of things. Congrats to Taiwo Oyedele. I mean, He's done so well. He was partner at PwC before he's leaving. PwC will miss him so much, but it's Nigeria's gain. And like Dr. Bati was saying, hope they'll treat him well. I mean, if things does not work out well, Taiwo Oyedele can go start up his own practice or something. I
think he'll do well.
He'll do very well. But
they'll be willing to listen.
Yeah, I mean, if they listen, we hope they listen. So, but he's fine. I should think he's fine, and big congratulations to him.
Oh, and a big point, sorry. Taiwo Oyedele has consistently said that we need to harmonize taxes. I mean, all three of you have mentioned that. So that is something he's really going to push. When he gets there, to harmonize the taxes. So,
I've known him for a couple of years now. He's always made the argument that 5 to 6 taxes can actually give us a 30 to 40 trillion revenue. So that's always been his argument.
Yeah.
Moving up a little bit further, Rotus, when you were just looking at the numbers, I kept on benchmarking, and I kept on just, I like to just sit down in my quiet moment and think sometimes, when will Nigerian media houses and media company be doing $8 billion in revenue?
We'll get there one day.
I mean, when are we going to have cheap companies in Nigeria do over 16 billion in revenue? When will the likes of Innoson and Nord, car making companies just like Tesla, do about $23 billion in revenue?
When you have 24/7 power.
I mean,
so they can
so we have power, but I think it's also good for stuff of dreams. Because you see, for you to be able to get there, you also have to have the capacity to dream. And every nation used to be at this point. Just this morning I was talking about Singapore.
Yep.
When I was saying Singapore yesterday now has the best passport. I said, if you are going to Singapore, Dr. Bati, if you are going to Singapore in the 60s, it wasn't like that. Things were dire. Nigeria was a whole lot better then. Lee Kuan Yew went through hell. But him and Dr. Y. Simmons decided to build the country, and they turned it from third world to first world. They shunned corruption, made accountability the order of the day. And today, Singapore is that economy.
They are going through some crises, though. You've heard about what's been going on with the presidency and the election coming up.
Yes.
Yeah, but economically,
yes.
they're doing well.
But also look at that small nation and look at the size of the economy. Are you kidding me?
Massive. Chips, technology.
Technology. So there's so much we can open up here. But Singapore wasn't like that today. People built Singapore. People should build Nigeria. Who will build Nigeria? President Tinubu, it's on your desk. Do it.
All right, so going to Netflix, interesting conversation there with regards to, I believe that Netflix in the next few years would have to be creative in terms of revenue.
Right.
In terms of, because number one, I mean, beyond the competition with other streaming services who are coming on board and are gaining momentum, we have Prime, who is entering into markets that Netflix had dominated in the past. But also this crackdown on password sharing, which was, I mean, perhaps that would account for the number of subscribers who increase, but they shouldn't, lean much on that, because after that's done, in terms of people subscribing, they've said, oh yeah, they're going to be doing more movies, content is going to be more excellent, but I think they have their work cut out for them.
Oh, yes.
There's more competition, there are more people playing, and more people who are putting a lot of money into that. And then very quickly with regard to South Africa and Russia, supporters of Russia have said that South Africa should have held their own, their sovereignty, and still allowed, Putin to come to show up for BRICS. However, it's also they said that Russia has a lot of investment in the ANC as well. Might this affect Russia and South Africa's relationship, particularly in terms of the funding of the ANC?
No, because it gave Putin not showing up gave them a way out. So now South Africa can say, okay, fine, he's sending a representative, Lavrov, and so he gives them an out.
I just say South Africa will have still defended him, because that was what happened with Omar al-Bashir.
Yeah.
Al-Bashir came and defended him.
They were ready, but there was pressure. There was serious pressure.
Yeah.
There was pressure.
Okay. I'm tempted to comment on that new international order that is emerging, but let me leave that. Singapore, there's been a reference to Singapore.
Yeah.
Now, Singapore scored 192 out of 270 countries. It means if you have a Singaporean passport, you have visa-free access to 192 countries of the world. But the big news, because when I raised that subject yesterday, I didn't know where Nigeria stood on the Henley Partners and IATA rating. Do you know that Nigeria is at the bottom?
Off your mic.
Nigeria is around number 90, and we have access only to about 46 countries.
Right.
Visa-free access.
Right.
We are in the same range with South Sudan.
Right.
When South Sudan was gaining their independence, I was there. It was my first assignment. My first outing traveling with President Jonathan. Yeah. Scorching sun in South Sudan.
Jungle.
And the people there, they are darker than I am. And I spent half of the time dehydrated and all that. We are put in the same category. Yeah. Our other colleagues are countries like Afghanistan and Syria, So that's how bad it is for the Nigerian passport. And the question is, what can we do about the Nigerian passport so that we will be more acceptable to the rest of the world? Is it a problem with diplomacy? Is it a problem with policy? So that Nigerian passport, green passport, can be an object of pride.
Right, indeed, agreed.
The Japanese can go where they like. The Singaporean have overtaken the Japanese. Namibia, Papua New Guinea, even Democratic Republic of Congo. These are countries that have more access than Nigerians. It is a very bad indicator for us, because this is based on concrete data.
Indeed.
However, in the UK, there are issues. Let me leave inflation to manage time. Now, the Nigel Farage problem. The NatWest, their subsidiary, Coutts, they say Nigel Farage's accounts have been suspended because of his political views. Now, in the UK, the government, both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, they are now saying, look, there's going to be emergency legislation to make sure that banks respect the right to free speech. Why must a bank worry about what I say, either on television or anywhere? Why must they do that to Nigel Farage?
Farage is, doctor, the man is a far-right individual. He said some very, very controversial things, but
About
still
Brexit.
And immigration, some very racist things. He really does, you know, he's on that side of the event, but still, free speech is free speech. You shouldn't, I'm in agreement with you. That doesn't mean his account should be frozen. So I think there's a crucial election coming up. It's not next year for the UK, 2024, I think. So it's important. So you don't want to clamp down on anyone. So that's the wrong.
No, there's a difference between free speech and hate speech.
Yes, hate speech and
but Farage hasn't.
What they are defending is free speech.
Right, free speech.
And they are saying he has a right to free speech. And what you say, your political views, should not determine whether you should have access to the banking system or not.
Right.
Because very soon, some people in Nigeria will say central bank should come up with the same rule. Yeah. And say some people have said what they don't like on television, and they must not be allowed to use ATM.
But fascism is already happening.
Well,
it happened during
EndSARS.
Didn't a state security authority call some people IPOB lawyers yesterday? Are you kidding me?
EndSARS was more action as opposed to speech, though. I see where doctor is going.
Don't worry. Very soon, I hope they won't use ATM. When you put your ATM, they say no.
You said something.
Access denied. Because of your political views. Because Nigerians like to imitate a lot.
True.